were waiting. Yay. This is gonna be so fun. We're counting down until YouTube says, okay, we're live. And in the meantime, it's snowing in Chicago. It looks like we're almost ready. And hello, everybody. It is episode 27 of Cheerful Conversations. I cannot wait to share this amazing conversation with you. But let's roll the intro video first. Hey. I really do need to figure out how to get this to not be such a ghetto intro, but we'll do that for now. So, hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to the 27th installment of Cheerful Conversations. I'm here with my awesome friend, Joel Zaslofsky, who is over in Minnesota. Hey, Joel.
Minnesota. It's snowing here as well.
It's crazy. I think it's stopped, but it's definitely wet outside when I take a look at it. But this is ridiculous, which is making me super excited that I'm going to Miami tomorrow. Florida, Floridians, I am coming your way. Save all of the warmth that you can. All right, so today our theme is the ABCDs of belonging, and we're going to talk a lot about this idea of community. But before we dive into all of that, we're going to do the usual intro spiels. So Joel, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Who I am. I am a 39-year-old dude who hangs out in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Edina. I am many things, and I am becoming even more things. A lot of people like, who are you? What do you do? What do you represent? My biggest things are community, spreadsheets, nerdy science things, a lot of multipotentiality, somebody who has a diversity of interests, passions, and skills, which is totally me. A lot of self-awareness and self-discovery, and helping other people kind of break out of their bubbles, because we all have ours, whether we're inside an internet filter bubble or whether we're in a social bubble. I become much more of an explorer, but I think the easiest way to kind of frame it is my overarching theme right now. And it has been for the last 5 years, which is bringing people together. It's not just what I do, but it's who I am and it's what I stand for, whether it's with my local neighborhood association, which I help run in this little 1,400 person neighborhood that I live in, or globally, there's an online community and other communities that I've run. Then basically from the hyper local to the neighborhood level to the global, anything and everything that has to do with meaningfully and joyfully bringing people together, I'm all about it.
I love it. And, it's interesting because I feel like I personally struggle a lot too with this idea of when people ask me, what is it that you do? And there's just so many things. And part of how we met is this whole concept of being a multipotentialite and really having so many different interests and passions and areas of expertise. And it's so hard to even explain this to people sometimes, what it is that we do, because it's like, well, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And at some point they're going to be like, okay, stop bragging about yourself. But it's just like how I lived. So I know I similarly will, whenever anybody asks me what I do, it's like, well, it's really hard to explain, but what's the overarching theme, which I'm now trying to, in my business and my life, I'm redefining it as everything is evolving. So I'll have one of those overarching themes to be able to share more clearly.
Sometimes there are multiple, and sometimes you can smoosh them together. That's the technical term, by the way. Smoosh.
Yeah. I mean, I could share what I was writing this morning if I can find it, but it's maybe I'll wait because I'm like, because I want to see how it comes out. Let me see if I can even remember it, because I don't have it in front of me.
It's okay. It can probably wait until it's fully baked.
So we'll keep on talking about belonging in the meantime. All right. So that kind of leads into how we met, this whole discussion of multipotentialites. And we were talking about this last week. I was like, how did we meet? I mean, in the very general sense, we got to meet at World Domination Summit in 2016, which was awesome. But we were introduced by our friend, our mutual friend, Jeff Sandquist, who, if he ever sees this, or I'll have to send it to him, we'll be like, hey, Jeff.
I love you, Jeff.
Who also lives in Minnesota, and I will hopefully have him on the show at some point, sometime soon. But I think, what's so great about it is, World Domination Summit is this place that brings people together of so many different backgrounds, so many different passions, and they all get along, which is amazing. And it's a community where I've felt, even coming in at I think was that year 6, I felt like I belonged, even though I missed the first, 6 years of it, or however long. Is it 7 years? 8, 9? No, I went to 6 and 7. Yeah. So the community had been there, but when I went to that place, or to that conference, I was like, wow, these are my people. I love this place. I love it. And there's so many different people that I connect with on so many different things. And it was a place where we got to see each other in person twice. And then that one other time where we had a long discussion at a Target Starbucks when I was in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was fun too. It's always fun when you're around.
Yes. So we've been able to see each other a number of times. We still live far away from each other, but we're very connected and still chat every so often. And so it's so great to have you in my circles. And so anyways, the next question that I am going to ask, and I know that you kind of mentioned some of this when you were introducing yourself, but is there anything in particular that you geek out on that might be unique or different? Yes,
and yes,
not career related is the one caveat.
Yes.
I give people.
Many things, and increasing every day. The one that I'm most fascinated by, and is perhaps my longest standing fascination, is something called quantum biology, which is a field of science that looks at biological systems, humans, for example, from a physics first perspective. So I first learned about this realm listening to a podcast episode back in February 2018, and it just blew my mind, especially like 3 seemingly simple things: water, light, and magnetism. Mm-hmm. But getting deep into those things, there's so much to know, and it's really cool and also really disturbing. We won't talk about the disturbing parts right now. We'll kind of focus on the really cool parts. But yeah, this realm of quantum biology has really given me, through science, I've never really been, even back in the days where I grew up very Jewish, and religion is not a part of my life right now. But that was always the basis of my spirituality. And I kind of haven't had that until about a year ago, when I realized just how amazing the sun is. And I go outside every morning and I look to the east, and I try to catch the sunrise, even if it's behind the clouds. I always tell my sons, I'm like, guys, it's always sunny. It's not like the sun failed to come up this morning. It's always sunny. You just have to feel it, even if there are clouds in the way. So understanding how the sun interacts with my suprachromatic nucleus, which is part of the brain, like right behind the eyes, and how it sets your circadian rhythms going, which helps your mood and helps you sleep better. And like all of these nerdy science things have really given me this deep spiritual connection to the sun, where every single day, like, I worship that awesome glowing orb in the sky, this source of wireless power that fuels me and every other form of life on this planet.
Yeah. Oh, I love the passion that you have around that. And while I don't necessarily worship the sun, I feel like I should, because every time like spring comes around and it gets sunny in Chicago, or even when I'm in a warm place, it's like the place where I want to be. While at the same time, I also cherish like the quiet times when it's a little bit dark, and just because you need to feel that variance, right? So I love it. That's awesome. That is a very unique thing to geek out on. I love it. The next thing that I want to do that I do with everyone is ask a random icebreaker question. So I know, Joel, before we started going live, you said that you wanted to pull a get vulnerable or a laugh a little card.
Yeah.
You want to make a choice on which one, and then I'll randomly pick one out of here.
You want to do paper, rock, scissors and decide, or like a virtual thumb war, or how are we making this decision?
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so how about we do this?
Let's just do the vulnerable one.
The what?
Let's do the vulnerable one.
Or
yeah.
let's just make a decision. Okay.
Yeah.
So here I go. I don't know what the question is until I pull it out now. Okay. So the question is, let me see if I can get it zoomed.
What would you like to share
that no one asks about?
Ooh. What I like to share that no one asks about? Well, it's super taboo for people to ask how much money you make or, how much you're worth. Mm-hmm. I really like talking about these things. I will say I do have a sugar mama. She's also my wife, which is awesome that they're one and the same. And, a lot of people, they get the sense based on the house that I live in or the kind of work that Melinda, my wife, does that we're doing pretty well from a financial perspective. Mm-hmm. So I like people to ask me, like, how rich are you? And the first thing that normally comes to people's mind is the financial side. And I'll tell them. And then I also like telling people about how rich I am socially and in terms of my physical environment, all the awesome things that are around here. But just to clarify, in the classical sense, I'm rich. And normally I'm not supposed to admit that because there's certain assumptions and certain things that people will say, oh, you're rich, are you? Okay, well, then you're this kind of person. But yes, I'm a man of means. And most of that are my wife. Like, I really don't make a lot of money and I don't necessarily try to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Find that fine. I don't particularly care about the traditional gender role where the man is responsible for bringing home the bacon or anything like that. Yeah. So no one asked me about it, but I'm quite happy to share these kinds of things.
That is really interesting because one of the themes that I've been exploring personally is just this concept of wealth. And I come from an upbringing where money and the amount of money you have and in your retirement bank account, whatever, dictates how successful you are. And I've had to really, really seriously get a handle on what my perspective of wealth is, because I spent a lot of the last, I quit my job almost 5 years ago. I, had a dollar amount that I was bringing in very, very regularly, and to throw that all away and kind of start my own business has been quite a journey. And a lot of it was looking at the numbers of here's how much my business is bringing in and here's how much I'm spending, and wow, that sucks. And it's gotten better over the years and it's going to continue to grow. But I too, my husband has a very well-paying job and we have that stability, but I'm also, I take ownership of that, in that I really, really am good at spending on the right things. And yeah, we waste some money, but it's still I'm the saver, and I'm the one who tries to manage all of those funds. So there's two different parts to it. And I definitely don't make as much money as him, but we are super comfortable as well. And I have to remember that. And then I also think about the things that we're capable of doing, like going on vacation every single month, even just for a weekend trip to fly somewhere, the entire family, and being able to do that comfortably and still not, and not feel oh God, we need to struggle, maybe except in the beginning of the year before his bonus comes in. But still, there's this, we are super comfortable too. And nobody ever wants to ask. There's a couple people who I've told this is my net worth, and it feels good because I've had this really great net worth since we were early 30s, which is kind of crazy in the grand scheme of things, but it really kind of gives me this perspective of hey, if I'm upset that I don't feel rich or I'm not making money, I don't that's, it's just not, it doesn't correlate.
Well, you mentioned that you 5 years ago, you threw away your previous role. And I know the spin of the word and probably didn't think too much into it. But when I quit my corporate gig where I was doing quite well about 7 years ago to make essentially $0 because I didn't know how I was going to make money as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It did kind of feel like throwing it away too. And if I continued on the same path that I was before, my net worth and our net worth as a family would be much bigger than it is right now. But once you get to a certain threshold, it's I have everything that I need and want, and I don't need and want any more money. I want my worth to be explored in ways other than the financial realm. So one of the joys and one of the luxuries that I have is because there are enough resources available right here is I can be super community centered and very other centric. I'm not constantly thinking about my bank account and whether there's going to be enough money tomorrow, which allows me to go out in the world and do good in the ways that fill me up. And that also other people have said, Joel, that's awesome. Like, please bring more of that community building stuff that you do.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, I love that. If I were to answer this question, I love your question or your response to this question of, I just dropped it on the floor, of what would you want people to ask? I think the thing that came to mind for me was, this is not necessarily something you'd want to necessarily go up to somebody and just have a conversation about negative things or anything like that. But I think, we always have, there's always something in our lives that we want to improve, or, what is your biggest aspiration right now? And, we all talk about the present, but I think I would like more people to ask the question of, like, what is the thing that's keeping you up at night right now? Because it allows a really deep discussion about what that is. And maybe the answer for somebody would be, I don't know, but I feel like there are things that keep me up at night that are such a bigger scale than what I can solve right now, that I'm trying to figure out how to bridge that by just moving day by day. But it keeps me up at night, and it's so frustrating. But at the same time, it's like every day, like, what can I do to align with that big vision? And what is that big vision? Because that's something that right now is very prevalent in what my thought processes are. And I would just like people to ask me more about it so that I can outwardly process what I've got going on in my brain, because that's just how I am able to bring things together and bring thought together, is to just spew it out of my mouth. But it's a long story, so you also have to have the patience for that. So because
I've got patience. I'm willing to hear it sometime. I'm also an external processor as well. I like to talk my thoughts out. I've never really been into journaling, or I very much value introspection, but a lot of times I just need to get it out of my head. And the best way I know how is through my mouth. So I also ask of my friends and family, please be patient with me. Sometimes I know I talk a lot, but you really help me. I'm really grateful when you just listen, or you reflect back to me, or you poke and challenge and point the holes in the things that I'm talking about, explain where you're confused, and then it helps me refine and understand better.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so the last thing before we dive into our conversation about belonging and all of that is sharing a cheerful news story. So every episode I've had my co-host bring on a cheerful, positive story, and then I share one as well. And so, Joel, you want to go first?
Sure, I will go first. I love the prompt. I didn't have to look too far. So I love hugs. Like, I am just a hugger through and through. And if people like high fives or handshakes or fist bumps or anything else, that's totally cool. But I am a hugger. Yes. So when you ask me for a cheerful news story, I don't really follow the news at all. It's like, how am I going to come up with something here? And I thought, well, why don't I do a Google search for hug news? that's what I typed into
good idea.
Hug news. And one of the first results that came up was a news story in late March. There's this woman, Mandy Egner. She is the owner of an airboat tour company in Florida. And there was this 30-second video that I found about her swimming with manatees, these gentle, beautiful, they're nicknamed sea cows for people who don't have the mental picture in their mind. And this manatee is hugging this woman who's swimming in the water, like, just as best as it can with its very limited, like, flipper-like things, is just trying to envelop this woman in a hug. And it's a real hug. So I thought, one, that just brought me personal joy as interspecies hugging going on. Like, you don't really think about that kind of thing happening, but the physical act of, like, bringing two entities, often, humans, but sometimes non-humans, together, and the symbolic nature of, I believe that once we've hugged, we are no longer strangers. We are on our way to becoming friends. So seeing that story about interspecies hugging, and the fact that it's not just humans who have this impulse to, come together in that kind of way. Yeah. That really did it for me.
I've been studying a lot about just the power of oxytocin and touch and all that stuff recently. And it's just so interesting, like that, how much that connection, even if it's with something that's not a human. Like whenever my dog will, like, he'll put his head like on my leg when I'm sitting on the floor and just kind of hang out there, and I'm like, oh, this makes me super happy. And so yes, I'm a hugger too. And so I've been, I don't remember what it, but I feel like whenever I meet people now, I'm like, I'm a hugger. Will you hug me? And I do it in this like really awkward way, but it's funny. But I have not been denied yet, so that's good.
Nice. Try this next time. Say hug, handshake, or high five. That's what I do when I meet people for the first time. Like just really quick, like hug, handshake, or high five. Give people the options, and then they can say what they like, and then you do.
I like that too. Yeah, but I like.
Okay, I want to hear your cheerful story as somebody who's trained.
Oh gosh, so what people have known about these stories, like, because I've had to do now, this is what, 27 of them. Every time I'm trying to look for more, just truly like positivity out of positive. But today I didn't do that. The reason why is I had a couple conversations over the last couple weeks where there has been, and this is not cheerful, but there have been people who have taken their own lives, people that either I know or know of, that somebody that they know. And so that's just kind of been on my mind. And I've been on this, like, oh, I just wish that there was some way that I could like show people that they matter, and continue to do that, because like suicide is just, it breaks my heart every time I hear about it. So I found a article that was very, very recent. I think it came out yesterday. These middle school students in Fresno, California were jogging to train for, oops, I don't know what just happened. I heard a beep. Okay, let me get back onto it. So
middle school students training.
So middle school students training in Fresno, California for, I think they were maybe just running or whatever, but they had seen a woman who was basically on the edge of a bridge and she was hanging. And if she would have let go, you know what would have happened. But basically the boys noticed this and they ran to their coach, like, what should we do? Telling him to call 911, and they ran to the woman and basically did whatever they could to keep her from jumping. And they were successful after 10 minutes of just telling her that her life is worth it and that she matters and all of that. And that just, I mean, these are middle school kids. And so I always love it when children are doing things that are super impactful, because they have just as much of a voice as we do as adults. But to just be able to prevent one person from from doing something that is very permanent, and to just live another day is great. And they put her into some mental health evaluation, not sure what's going on yet, but just the fact that there are people that do great things like that. And it's so important to me. So that was my cheerful news story out of a somewhat unfortunate, but we saved it from the unfortunate result. So that's my story to share. So yeah, so that is that, which means now we can talk about this whole theme, which we coined as the ABCDs of belonging. And we are going to also talk about this. The whole ABCD references this asset-based community development, which, Joel, I want you to explain to everyone because you say it way better than I am. But before we start with that, I want to ask you, in your opinion, like, why do you feel belonging is such a struggle in today's society? Because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always feel like I will go to things and I'm always like, do I fit in? Or I don't feel like I'm connecting. And I just feel like an odd bird a lot of the time. And I also feel like a lot of people feel that way. So why do we struggle with this? But we're all people and we all have things in common, but it still is so hard to feel like we belong anywhere.
Yeah. I might sound a little bit, one of my favorite community builders and just kind of philosophers about community is a guy named Peter Block, who helps run the Asset-Based Community Development Institute in Chicago, Illinois. April,
Oh,
you're pretty much living in the home of ABCD, Asset-Based Community
I need to
Development.
go like find this guy then. Maybe.
Yeah, he lives in Cincinnati now, but other folks like John McKnight and other people out of Northwest or DePaul, actually DePaul,
Okay.
they're incredible. But this sense of belonging, where do we get it from? Like, where does belonging come from?
Mm-hmm.
It typically comes from community, feeling a sense of place, feeling a sense of purpose, wherever it is that you are or wherever it is that you go.
Mm-hmm.
And this sense of belonging, since it is, in my opinion, based on the feeling of being in community with others, that's been breaking down for decades, at least, in North America where we are. So when you are moving a lot, which is fine, some families or some people, they move every 2 or 3 years to a different neighborhood, to a different city, to a different country. It's really hard to establish a sense of belonging when we have so much mobility and the world is our oyster in a number of ways. And that's great, but it also has a way of unintentionally isolating us, making us feel a sense of detachment or helplessness when it comes to where we are or the kinds of things that we could do with other people who are with us. So I really think it's due to a lot of different factors, some of which are institutional, some of which are cultural, when it comes to the breakdown of communities of all different kinds.
I think too that, because, and we'll probably talk about this more at length down in the rest of the hour, just this idea of because we are leveraging technology to become super connected, it's almost doing a disservice, because then it gives people the permission to kind of like stay home and like connect to people through the internet. And that's a different type of connection that, isn't as deep as being offline and in person with one another. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the fact that we are in two separate cities and having this deep conversation over the internet is amazing, and we should do that more. But it's also just the fast-paced nature of our society and how everything is just moving at a speed of lightning, and you don't even have that opportunity to connect and really understand how you fit, because you're not giving it the time. So that's something that has kind of come up in my mind in terms of why is it so hard to belong. But yeah. So, all right. Well, tell me what this asset-based community development is, and I'm gonna have to like, if they're based in Chicago, now I'm like, oh no, I should know. But
Well,
that's
it's okay.
why I have you, because you are such a connector.
Well, the cool thing, this is not an original concept. It's something that we as humans have done for 99.999% of our existence, and has been the default way of interacting with each other until some people can trace it back to the dawn of agriculture or the Industrial Revolution or post-World War II or whatever it may happen to be. We won't do a history lesson here, but it's not new. It's basically a revival of the way that we've interacted with each other. So ABCD, Asset-Based Community Development. Another one of my favorite people in this realm is a man, Cormac Russell, a wonderful Irish man. His words are poetry. I just love them. And I love the way that he frames it. He talks about ABCD as kind of the joy and importance of seeing the gifts in others. And then when we invite each other to share our gifts in a non-commercial way in a kind of community environment, we make connections around what he says is what's strong instead of what's wrong. So a lot of traditional community building, especially from a nonprofit perspective, is coming in, finding flaws or issues or things that need to be fixed or have money or other resources thrown at it, and then defining the problem for the people who have the problem, and then saying, don't worry, I got you. Like, I can help you with this little slice of things. It's not a holistic way of looking at things. And it's a deficit problem-based view of community. Whereas ABCD is all about the gifts, the skills, the talents, the resources that we internally within each community that we have, that we can elevate to the conscious level by knowing each other, by getting that sense of belonging, and then sharing with each other in all kinds of cool ways. So as you kind of think about, what might I offer within the communities that I have? It could be your social connections, either direct ones that you have or on behalf of some group or organization that you are a part of, often associations. I love the concept of an association and like being associated with people as part. That's why I love my neighborhood association. There's lots of different physical resources. If it's a offline based community, if it's online, it could be economic, it could be the stories that we're sharing with each other. But really, it's all about this concept of focusing on what's strong instead of what's wrong.
What's strong? That's awesome. And so, okay, so you're saying in normal community development, they're looking at an issue that needs to be solved, whereas in asset-based community development, it's like, here's a characteristic that will bring people together, or this is how we strengthen. Is that?
Yeah, a lot of people get involved in community only when they're mad. Like when there's a new development that's about to be created 2 blocks away from them, and people get in the, well, not in my backyard kind of flow. And then they go to the city council or some kind of municipality and they say, oh, no, you don't. And they're mad, they're angry, they're frustrated. And that, for a lot of people, is the primary way that they come together and they experience community, is being mad and seeing that there's a problem and wanting to do something about it. That some external force is pushing pressure on them and like basically bending them to their will. Whereas with ABCD, it's all about, so what if some municipality like the city or the town that I live in wants to do these things? I can do things too. And I don't need their permission to do things. Can I create a tool shed where like a tool library where we can share tools with each other? Because I know I don't need to own a chainsaw, but maybe once a decade I might want that. Can I just go to the tool library and get that? Can we create, communal resources, whether they're physical, like a well where we can all get groundwater, and we can just have direct access, kind of that, again, kind of going back to the spiritual connection that I have. I love sourcing my own water from a spring. It just really lights me up. So yeah, it's trying to figure out, and we can get into some of the questions that we can ask each other in community that help focus on the assets and the resources that already exist, instead of trying to figure out, well, this really sucks, we're just screwed, we should be resigned to our fate.
And I wonder if there's like a different, like a different version, or a more positive version, or an ABCD version of that example that you gave, where, oh, we don't want a Taco Bell to, this is like a true story in my hometown. We don't want a Taco Bell at that street corner. So we're going to vote it out. And a lot of people got angry about it. But I feel like if there was like a positive spin on how we could do it, to think about, okay, why do they not want, like a Taco Bell at the street corner or whatever, and coming from a different perspective, instead of like, we don't want this, instead like, we want to cultivate this in our community, where it's, insert positive statement here, where, we're promoting healthy eating, or, whatever that is. And how can we resource that, and how can we problem solve, instead of just saying like, no, we're putting the axe on this idea because we don't like it. Is that doable or no? Does that even make sense?
Oh yeah, it's doable. I mean, I could give you 10 different case studies of people who have created a community coffee shop where a Taco Bell might have gone in instead. And it took a lot of resources and a lot of elbow grease. Some people might have constructed the building on their own, with or without permission from zoning codes or other kind of city entities. There's a lot of cool, whether it's in East London, there's a revival going on over there, and I could share links or point you to different things. Maybe I'll get to share the story of Edmonton in Canada about an abundant community initiative that this one guy started a little while ago. So a lot of things just start with one person having an idea and then going to other people that they're in community with, online or offline, and saying, what is it that we can create together that we can't create alone?
Yeah. I love this. I feel like this is very timely for some of the things that I'm thinking about for my own business and movement. So like this is great because now I have like, ooh, I'm just think about this. And I think that there is this piece of there's only so much that we can do as one person, right? You can say, this is my mission in life, this is what I can do, but it only becomes stronger when you're not doing it by yourself, right? Because then it's weaving in more and more perspectives and trying to create this movement that now is just not in this tiny little hub.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to do things by yourself. But okay, so if we are going to look at using asset-based community development as a means to grow, grow our society, what are the benefits of this type of community development that contributes positively to our happiness as a society?
Well, I guess one of it is focusing on the gifts that we have to offer each other. There's a lot of places in life where nobody cares whether you can hold a tune and whether you can sing. I'll give you just a quick little story. So for the first few years that we lived in this house that I'm in right now, next door, Marvin, wonderful 70-ish-year-old man, lived there. And Marvin used to be like a Frank Sinatra caliber singer. You've never heard of Marvin Schumeister before. But if you Google him, you'll find a couple little things. And I heard him sing one time. I went over to his house and he was just kind of doing a little tune for a minute. And it was incredible. Like, he still had this amazing voice, but Marvin was basically a hermit. Like, he really did not interact with anyone. So what I would do is I would go over to Marvin's house and I would tell him, Marvin, will you sing something for me? And he would. Or even better, the next potluck that we do, the next block party or like neighborhood potluck that we do, will you come and will you offer, like, if I can find somebody with a guitar, will you do a song with them? And unfortunately, he died before he got the chance to do that. But one of Marvin's joys and one of his gifts that nobody asked him to share was the gift of song. So here's somebody like me, I view myself not necessarily as a community builder, but as a community animator. I go and I see what's dormant and I help bring it to life. I am not planting the seed. The seed is already there. I'm just the one coming in with a watering can and dumping a little water on it too, or bringing in some other things that will help it thrive. Yeah. So when we invite each other to share the assets that we have, oftentimes, I like to talk a lot about gifts of the head, what we know a lot about, gifts of the heart, what we're passionate about, gifts of the hands, what we can physically or digitally create with our hands, or gifts of community, all those different social connections that we have. Yeah. So when you go to people and you have this kind of framework or this kind of philosophy in place where you're constantly inviting people into conversation or to co-create or to start projects, they're typically about what people love or what they value. It's very much a values-based conversation that they're having. And what is it that we can do together? Like, how can it's very much a creative conversation instead of we see the pillars of society slowly crumbling underneath our feet. Like, what are we going to do about it, people? So it's just a completely different conversation that people can bring their whole selves to instead of some tiny little scared, perhaps angry version of themselves.
Yeah. Isn't that funny that I'm going to go pick up this vulnerability card in terms of what we were like, what do you like to share that no one asks about? And it's almost like how that kind of weaves into our topic of, trying to look at the gifts that people have and trying to bring them to the forefront so that other people can benefit from them, or we can raise more connection and community around those things, right? It's like so ironic.
Yeah. And a lot of it is about the questions that we ask each other too. Mm-hmm. People who really get into asset-based community development are people who learn to ask really good questions. Yeah. And I'm somebody who really values a good question, either one that I can come up with. I love facilitating conversations among people. And that's often like, I don't have the answers. Most of the time, I don't even know what the heck I'm talking about. But if I can ask a good question, that is a gift that I'm giving to the person who is receiving that question. And when other people can ask me good questions, I'm like, dang, good question. Like I've heard myself say that both in my head and to other people too. I'm like, how'd you come up with that question before? So I could offer up some other questions that people might want to ask each other. I don't know if you want to get into that.
Yeah, no, let's talk about it, because I was going to say, I feel like I've had other conversations about similar things in previous episodes, but there's always this, as you're starting to connect with someone, and, I think sometimes some of these questions that I have in this deck are really great connection questions, but do you have any standard? I know that as you get to know somebody deeper, you will ask, more deeper questions, but do you have a go-to like initial question that really gets the mind thinking when when you're just getting to know somebody, that gives you a good sense of who they are and how you can connect with them?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I like to ask newish people that I'm getting to know are, what kinds of things are you excited about right now? Not thing, not singular, things. Maybe that speaks to the multipotentialite in me.
Yeah.
Like I'm constantly thinking, come on, I know there's more than one. So start telling me this and this and this and this and this. So making it not a singular, but a plural, and encouraging people to share more than just one thing. Within a community context, like when I help bring people together, or when I'm in community with each other or in groups, some of the questions that I really like to ask, and these aren't original questions, a lot of these come from kind of a field kit, if you will, or like a hand guide for other people who really believe in ABCD. I'll just offer up a couple. There's tons more. I could link to many, many more. So one of them is, if 3 members of a community you belong to are willing to help, what would you love to do to make it a better place to be? And there's a lot going on in that question right there. Is, so one, you're saying if 3 members of a community, meaning I'm looking for more than just you, I'm looking for you to partner, to intentionally, deliberately communicate and co-create with people. If 3 members of a community belong to or are willing to help, meaning you have to go ask for help, which is kind of like this meta level skill. Asking for help for a lot of people, myself included, is really hard sometimes. So going to make that ask, will you help me? Do you share this passion? Do you want to see your community like I do? Do we have a similar vision? Like, what would you do? What would you love to do to make it a better place to be? I get really far, really fast when I ask people that question. So that's one of them.
That question. I was just making my mind like, what would I want?
Another one, I think I already mentioned it, is, what are your gifts? So gifts of the head, gifts of the heart, gift of the hands, gifts of community. You can get people talking about, well, I really love caring for small children, or I'm super passionate about the environment. I love to juggle, and I would love to teach some local kids how to juggle. You got anyone? And I'm like, yes, you love juggling, and I could come up with at least 5 kids in this neighborhood who would love to get together with you and learn to juggle. So asking these gifts-based questions really get people excited. And there's kind of this sense of ownership too, where depending on what culture you're from, you're encouraged to be very humble about what it is that you love or what you know, but inviting people and giving them permission to own their gifts and to share them with other people that they're in community with, whatever that community may be. That's a really powerful thing too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
So I'll stop there for now.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, someone's like, where do I want to take this conversation? So if we're trying to figure out, okay, so people might be stumbling upon this conversation and saying, okay, belonging, okay, I need to figure out how I can belong more, and maybe coming at it from this perspective of this asset community-based development to bring people together with a common positive goal. There's this piece of, okay, I get the concept. I see how it impacts and benefits society to go this way. But then let's say you're just, anonymous Joe Schmo who's like, okay, I want to do this. I want to get more involved in doing this asset-based community development, ABCD. I want to implement more of that in my life. So where would we start?
Well, you can start where you are, which is just asking the people around you some of these questions that I'm proposing. And they're not all necessarily what we would think of as positive questions. Some of them are, what have you done to contribute to the very things you want to change in your community or communities? This sense of, take responsibility. If you want to see something different and changed and improved, you probably have something to do with the current state of the way that things are. So asking different questions is one way to do that. You can read the Assetbased Community Development Institute in Chicago. They've got an awesome website with, it's academic in nature, so people can read all kinds of things that are in there. Probably not the greatest jumping off point for a lot of different people, but I would say whatever you can do to just find your version of community, online or offline, being somebody who seeks it out, seeing the value in community for community's sake.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily you have to go out and do something. You have to first believe in the benefits and the power of community, even though it's messy, even though it's by nature inefficient, even though you're going to encounter lots of humans where you're like, oh my gosh, do I really have to talk to this person again? Like, do I really have to be in community with this person? You develop a lot of empathy and compassion by constantly stumbling into or running into the same kind of people. So yeah, I would just encourage people to start asking different questions and to find a group, a single group, whether they're already a member of it or whether it's a new group. Maybe it's interest-based. Maybe they want to get into music or arts or design or whatever it is, like going to seek out a new group and seeing how you can contribute, not necessarily receive first, but go out and make a contribution to that group.
Yeah.
Or strengthen an existing community that you're part of by taking a little inventory, like go through with a pen and paper or type it up and be like, what are my gifts of the head, the heart, the hands in community? What are the things that I could offer other people? And then pick one off your list and like go and offer that to people who probably really want that thing. If only they knew, one, that you had it available to you, and two, that you were willing to share it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, as we were talking, I think that even before going out and asking the questions, and not to say that you have to do this like deep dive and crawl into a hole and do some of this like personal introspection yourself to kind of understand what your own personal gifts are, right? Because you can't necessarily reach out to people or figure out where your community is if you don't know yourself as well. Right. So what lights you up and what types of things that you're passionate about and what gifts you have so that you can either connect with other people who share those gifts or other people who crave those gifts and connect in those different ways. Because if you don't know what you have to offer, then it almost is like the first person you have to have connection with is yourself. Right. And feel like you belong on your, on your own, and feel comfortable in your own skin. But once you have done some of that work to say, this is what I enjoy, you could base it totally off of a feeling. Hey, I just really like music, so I'm gonna go do something. Or maybe I'll, if I want to start somewhere, maybe I want to take up learning an instrument. But like I want to and just see where that goes. Because I think about some of the things that I've done in my life. Like last year, I did improv, and I had some reasons why I wanted to do it. A, it would make me a better public speaker. B, I could, take all the perfection that I have around anything that I do and drop it to like the nth degree. So if I make a mistake, it's like, I don't even care about it anymore. But
I made a mistake.
Like, yeah, just like, I don't know, it's probably happened a couple times in this conversation already. But I took it for a number of reasons, but what I wasn't necessarily thinking about at the very end was, what community it would make me become a part of. And it made me appreciate this idea of like performance and kind of tapping into the high school version of me that used to do all the, do plays and musicals and everything like that, or be on stage. And I'm like, oh, this is something that I don't do in my career. I do it in my shower, but I don't share that with anyone. But how could I share more of that in line with already this massive thing that I'm trying to create with the work that I do, right? I feel like it made me feel like I belong in this like creatives community that I hadn't been in for over like 15 years because I was so focused on the engineering and the science and the data and all of that stuff. And so now I'm like, okay, how can I engage this community? I have all these people who are aspiring actors, or they want to do improv, or they want to be on SNL or whatnot, but they have so much talent and people don't get to see it. And while they're still like in this place where they're not a big deal yet, what can I do to help them leverage their strengths and help, push this idea of let's put more positive happiness into the world using that. And if they're willing to partner with me to create something beautiful, and we don't know where it's going to go or what the resources or what might come of that, it would still leverage those gifts and be able to, put more positive content out there, which is something that I've been super passionate about for the last, just looking at the fact that there's negative stuff on social media and TV media. The news is never is a Debbie Downer. Like, how do we shift that narrative? And I can't, I'm still trying to figure out how to implement that, but there's also so much that goes into it. And so baby steps, but that's the thing where it's like, I just crave more. I feel like people would watch more TV if it wasn't so conflicting and so over dramatic and negative. And even in politics, I know that that's a long battle to fight with just how negative sometimes politics can be, but what's the little stuff that we can do to really highlight the stuff that's really important when it comes to affecting change in our political landscape and all that stuff. So instead of looking at it as an angry, we dislike who's leading or whatever the perspectives are. So yeah, I just went on a rant.
It's okay. I was about to say right on, April.
Yay. So, all right. So we kind of have discussed what is this concept of asset community-based development. I like saying it instead of just ABCD.
Sure.
We've talked about how this can help us feel more in tune with belonging in the social landscapes that we have surrounding us. We've talked about the little things that we can do to kind of get ourselves on that path of leveraging our gifts and our strengths to create something bigger and better as a community. I also wanted to ask, do you have any opinions on communities that either you're a part of or we're a part of or anything that are actively using this type of asset-based community development, that are doing really, really well with it, that we can kind of show people as a model if they're still how does this work, or who's doing it right, or what can we use as an example out there in the world that's really doing community development correctly?
Yeah. Well, the community that I'm a part of, the Puttytribe, we're a asset-based community development community, and we've been that way for 7 years. It's really fun when you allow members of the community we want to build a new online home for us and create a new website that we own, that we're not dependent on some other platform. So over the course of 9 months, I invited 6 people to co-create it with us, and that was a lot of fun. One thing that I mentioned before, those Canadians, they've got this community thing dialed in a little bit more than we Americans do. Although, I mean, the city of Seattle, they have some incredible initiatives and money, millions of dollars that they give towards neighborhood oriented projects. Mm-hmm. But the city of Edmonton in Canada, I don't even know where to start. So
they're crushing it on this community development thing.
They are crushing it. And there's a lot of online people too. I would say in general, when a community is doing well, when you look at something, you're like, whoa, they're pretty rocking. People are perhaps unintentionally or unknowingly using the principles of asset-based community development. But just this one guy. So John McKnight and Peter Block, who I mentioned before, they have this book called The Abundant Community, which is great. And this guy, Howard Lawrence in Edmonton, after reading this book, he undertook a pilot project. This was January 2013 I started. And he came with this idea that local residents have gifts and skills and knowledge and abilities that they're willing to contribute to improve just the general assets of a neighborhood. So he went block by block and he tried to find block captains where he knew that there was only one of him. But if he could find on each block one person who would go and walk around and do things like asset mapping, which is going and talking to people about the assets they have available and which ones of them they'd be willing to share with their neighbors. So he found all these different block captains, and like that expanded and expanded. And now, after a number of years, the city of Edmonton got behind this as well. Initially, it was just one dude who had this idea and started just talking to his neighbors. And now through the Abundant Community Edmonton initiative, like you can go to the city of Edmonton's website. They've got this awesome 7-minute video about what it is and all of the cool things that have happened as a result of it too. But it's something that I've thought about doing locally here where I am. It's like a 3 to 5 year project, which scares me. Like, do I want to embark on this, especially since no one's going to pay me for it, and it might take up more time than I want, that might take away from my family. But yeah, really looking at towns or cities that have found 1 or 2 people who have read a book or have had a conversation or who want to revive what it is that we've done as humans in kind of our tribal sense, which is sharing with each other, sharing in the broadest sense. That is probably my favorite story that I've had, and what this guy, Howard Lawrence, did. But it wasn't just him. Like, he was the catalyst. And then he invited all these other people to go and to spread ABCD throughout the city. And now the whole city is doing all these cool different initiatives under the guide or the guidance of all these different block captains.
I love that. I love that. I am feeling inspired too. When we get out, I know that this is so small, but I'm like, I just want to go and like post on social media. Like, what are your biggest gifts that you can offer to the world? And just like have people like, and just see if I can see how many people I can get to respond to that. I'm going to do that. Let me make a note. Because I know that there's so many people that I surround myself with that have amazing gifts, but to just even have it like on a list where like, if somebody needs something, then this is what this person is willing to or has to offer to the world. I just want to write it down, or I'm gonna forget and I won't do it. But that's gonna be my next step in terms of just really bringing community together, no matter where you are. And we'll see what happens. I'll have to keep you updated on that. But oh my gosh, it's already 3:57, so I think we have to stop talking about it now and answer my one last question from somebody in my interweb space, or who's been following me and asking me questions. So are you ready for that? But I so appreciate that. I feel like this conversation now is like not, or it's like, it was just getting like, oh my God, there's so many more things we can talk about. But we'll have to save that for another day. But okay, so as I always do, I end with a question from my viewership to just give answers to the questions that surround people's minds. So the one that I have for today is the question is around how to support myself and my family working on projects that make the world a better place. And it's interesting because I feel like we kind of touched on some of that in little pieces of our conversation already, but being somebody, and we're both in that position where we are actively doing work that is going to make the world a better place, but we both have families, we both have things that we have to juggle and just general life. So what would be your advice to this person?
Oh, I got to go quick. One of them is, as I look about supporting myself and my family, one of the best things that we did as a family was create a family mission statement about 4.5 years ago. It's 77 words. It's pretty simple, but we talk about our values and our guiding principles about respect and humility and being intentional, making our home a place of acceptance, warmth, and gratitude, prioritizing learning, experimenting in global experiences. I've read this family statement a number of times too. So I'm going through portions of it too. That's been a really big one.
When did you do that? How long ago did you create
That
it?
was November 2014 that my wife, Melinda, and I, we sat down for a couple of hours and we came up with the family mission statement, and we had it printed. It's up on the mantle in the living room. And
How old
every
were the kids at the time?
Sunday when we do our family meeting, somebody reads the family mission statement, which is just a reiteration of what we represent as a family.
That's awesome. That's been on my list of things to do, but I feel like my kids are not like focused enough yet. So did you just do it with Melinda and then they're like, here's what, or did you have your kids have any input as you were creating it?
Well, Clark was just a little older than a year at that point in time, and Grant was a little more than 4. So I couldn't really invite them to contribute to
Yeah,
that.
no, it's okay. And,
We're really looking forward
yeah.
to redoing it, to re-envisioning it when they are, full-fledged thinking and feeling and doing humans. And then, yeah, we very much want their input on a second version of it.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if it was.
What about you?
We have not done it yet, but it's on like the long laundry list of what I do. But we do family meetings every week, and we talk about, what was the highlight of the week? What do we, what can we do to make next week even better? And so we have that practice in play. But Justin and Ryan are almost 10 and 8, so we are getting to that point where I feel like they can implement, and they've been doing gratitude journals every morning and night, and so they're like, we've got them on a path. But I want them to have a say in it so that we can really do that. So it's probably coming very, very soon. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I think that's a good first step. I think one of the things, and I feel like this is the answer that I give for every single time I have a question, but it all really comes down to, when you're supporting yourself, you need to understand like where that sweet spot is where you feel financially stable, right? Because when I read how to support myself, I think financially is usually what people are thinking. And I think you just have to have awareness of like what you are able to do, but also know that the things that you've got going on in your life, or the things that you might have expectations around, what you might need to invest in order to make something happen. I think there's also creative ways that you can implement making the world a better place. You just really understanding and knowing, how do you want to impact the world? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? And then, understanding what your family needs to be comfortable, and then figuring out then all the pieces. So, I mean, it might be a more longer winded answer, but I think that you really need to start with, how do you want to make the world a better place? Because we would love the world to be this miraculous, everything, but we already know that we can't always do it all alone. But what is the legacy that you want to leave behind? And then understanding that piece of, what can you do within your means, and how can you make sure that you're comfortable with what you're doing?
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, well, it's time to wrap up. And Joel, thank you so much for being here. I feel like we need to have some more deep conversations about community building and all that. And so I'm going to have to ping you on that later. But thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. I feel like I'm going to have an amazing night now because I just feel super belong. So thank you so much. And
thanks for inviting me on the show, April. It was a lot of fun. I'm really grateful to be able to do this with you.
Absolutely. And for all of you who are watching, thank you so much for making it this far. And my next show will be on April 24th. So see you later. Bye, guys.